Hi, I'm Matt here in Michigan.
And I'm Randall here in Texas. Today, Matt and I are bringing you a new movie review. It's a follow up, reboot, soft reboot, sequel, whatever you want to call it. It's Candyman 2021. And it stars Yahya Abdul Mateen II, Tiana Paris, Nathan Stewart Jarrett, Coleman Domingo, and Michael Hargrove. It also sees Vanessa Williams, Virginia Madsen, and Tony Todd all reprise their roles from the original Candyman film, which we recently did a review of, so go check that out if you haven't already seen it. This version of Candyman is directed by Nia DaCosta, who is also the co-writer along with producer Jordan Peele. Nia is also known as the writer and director of Little Woods and is the director of the currently filming MCU film The Marvels, which will see her reuniting with the star of Candyman, Tiana Paris. But before we get too far into the review, make sure if you like this sort of thing, you give this video a like. All of those likes really help us out. And if you want to see more, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell icon if you always want to know when we're uploading our latest videos.
Now, Candyman is about an artist who finds inspiration in the story of a wrongly accused black man beaten to death by police and the urban legends of the Candyman. The artist starts to change as he finds a greater connection to these stories. Candyman had a $25 million budget. So far, it has received average reviews in audiences and positive reviews from critics. All right, Randall, you get the first go. What did you think about this new Candyman movie?
I think it's the most worthy Candyman sequel that we've seen yet. Now that's setting the bar extremely low because the real sequels, the original sequels, aren't that good. That's not to take away from this one. In essence, I really liked it. I liked what it was trying to do. It's not perfect, and we'll get into some of the things that I didn't like about it. But, my first impression of it is that it was actually a pretty decent film to just go watch, and more importantly, a pretty decent Candyman film. But Matt, what about you?
Yeah, I thought this was a pretty good film. Now, I haven't seen the other Candyman sequels, and when we did our review of, the first Candyman movie, that's the first time I'd ever seen Candyman. But this one, I think it does a pretty good job of, the legend of the Candyman and stuff. I think there are some similarities between this movie and the original Candyman, but this movie also adds some new layers while still staying true to the original Candyman movie.
My biggest thing that I definitely liked is I liked the flourishes on the outside. I loved the little puppet, paper puppet, shadow puppets that were on the wall to depict a lot of the things that they didn't want to tell. And it's got a really modest budget of $25 million for a modern film. So the way that they were able to stretch that out and make it artistic was really good. But I didn't like that the rest of the film wasn't so artistic. There's parts in it that are super artistic, and then there are parts in it where it's yeah, that just looks like a normal Hollywood production. But one of the things I definitely have to shine the light on while I'm talking about that really good use of artistic license is the voiceovers from Virginia Madsen, where they don't ever really show her on screen. You just hear her through her recordings when she was doing the original Candyman investigations. I thought that's a really good way of including her, and it was kept so super secret. You don't really know it's coming until it's there. And I really enjoyed a lot of the way this was filmed, but some of it was also kind of a letdown the way it was filmed. Hit and miss there.
Yeah, it's funny. I knew that Vanessa Williams was going to be in this movie, and Tony Todd was going to be in this movie too. But yes, for Virginia Madsen, I didn't know that she was going to have any part in this movie. So when that happened, that was a bit of a surprise for me too. And as you're talking about art, some areas were really good artistically, and some not. It's kind of funny too because our main characters are an artist and a curator, so art plays a big role in this film. One person I would say that I don't know, depending on the audience, may not. Candyman for me is a little bit different, I think, in this film. I think people that are maybe just into Candyman movies because of the character that Tony Todd created and stuff, I think they may be a little bit disappointed with that aspect of the film. But I think what they do with Candyman and the Candyman character works so well for this movie as a story, in this movie.
No, dude, I absolutely love it. I can see where you're going. Like if you're a big fan of the way that they had done the Candyman originally and Tony Todd's, absolute legendary depiction of it, there's things in here where you're like, well, that's not like what I want to remember. That's not the way that I like it. But it's cool the way they do it where like urban legends are not the same for everybody. Urban legends change and they ebb and flow over time for it to be like this was my way we did it. Everyone has the urban legend of like the hook hanging off of the car, but everyone tells it a little bit different. So it's the way it works in this film, having a Candyman is all of these things. Candyman is all of these urban legends. And for you, whatever version it is that you find is, potentially different from what version that someone else finds. It works so well for this film. And at the end of the movie, not trying to give any spoilers away or anything, it all makes sense. It's like we're not taking away anything that happened before. We're not taking away anything that happened with Tony Todd's Candyman, and you get to see him again. It all makes sense and works in the confines of the story they're telling.
It was interesting as watching this film. I was kind of like, you know what, the way Candyman does his killings or whatever in this movie, I felt was a bit different. Departure from the first movie, where there's kind of like a question, like, all right, how does Candyman actually work? Is Candyman really the person, killing these people, or who's actually killing this? I think this movie takes a different direction with that, but it still works. I think it still works with the original movie, even though I think it's a different approach in this. And yes, like you said, with all the different people being Candyman or whatever, or the idea that that Candyman can live on and not just the original like Candyman, how it's the legend and stuff of it that lives on. I think it's a great way to tell this story and to continue to tell this story.
And to be fair, it completely goes off of the end of the original Candyman, where he's like, it's time for a new legend. If you get that feeling from it, it's like, no, legends can change, urban legends can morph into something new. Even Virginia Madsen's, character story in this is told, and it's told incorrectly by multiple people depending on their perspective. So it's a theme that you see throughout the film, not just for, hey, Tony Todd's now in his like 70s or whatever it is, 70s or 80s, and probably can't do this role he did 30 years ago the same way. It's just a way that we can really weave it in. You had mentioned the main characters are artsy, and this is kind of got some artistic flair. Well, on the same side of that, the storytelling side of that, it's a theme that pops up again and again. It's not just Candyman, it's just stories in general.
And I think that's a lot of what felt familiar to me between this movie and the original, is a lot of how, Virginia Madsen's character, was learning about the Candyman, legend and stuff, and, the different crimes and everything connected to Candyman. And this, I feel like our main character kind of interacts and learns about Candyman in a much similar way, doing his own investigation, looking in to Chicago and stuff. But of course, his story is a bit different, but I don't want to give that away for this too. If you're someone who hasn't seen the original Candyman movie, I think you can see this without watching it, but I do think you get a little bit more if you watch that original movie, because this movie plays a lot into that original movie.
And I want to emphasize something about that because they do not use nostalgia super heavily in this like a lot of soft reboots do. The fan bait, the fan service, it's actually more its own movie and its own sequel than it is just, all right, let's do Candyman again. No, it's definitely going and doing its own thing. Now, there are parts about it, as much as I did enjoy it, there are parts about it that I thought were kind of lacking or could have been done better. And one of the things that I really like about the original, and I had to sit and think about this for a while, like, what is it about this version of Candyman, this film, that's missing? What is it that doesn't quite hit with me? And I finally came to it not that long before we started filming, where I'm like, in the original, everything that's happening, the terror, the horror, it's all happening to, on a very personal level, Virginia Madsen's character. And in this one, the terror and the horror that's happening is happening on the peripheral of our main characters. It's not happening to our main characters until far too late into the film. And I'm like, well, you're not putting them in the kind of peril or the jeopardy or making me ask the questions that the original did. That doesn't make it bad. It's just a thing that, after I sat and thought about it, kind of bugged me.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was alluding to too, especially on earlier on in the movie, how I was seeing how this movie was being a bit different than the first movie. That was a lot on what I was trying to hit on is how, Candyman is doing his killings and stuff too, and it is because there is a little bit of a, there's a connection but a disconnect too between, the Candyman killings and our main characters in this movie. Now, I don't think it's necessarily bad, but it is a different approach. And if you're someone that's, looking at from the original Candyman movie, it is something that is different.
The way I look at it, I just wanted it to be a little bit more personal, even though the story does end up being pretty personal to our main characters. I wanted the horror, I wanted the terror to be for them. And instead, it's people that don't necessarily, I don't want to say deserve it, but it's just there. Like, there's an entire scene where it's in the trailer, the earlier trailer, where, some high school girls are in the bathroom and they do the Candyman thing. And that scene's just there. And it has nothing to do with the characters, really. It's just kind of there. And I'm like, well, you didn't see anything like that in the original. Everything was so tightly entwined with what's going on with our main characters.
Yeah, to me, like the horror with like the Candyman and like the Candyman killings, to me those aren't the scary parts are really like the horror elements. I mean, even it's the slasher and stuff too. But for me, I think this movie is more taking a look at like black trauma, and like that's the real horror of this film is the lived experience and stuff. This one is taking a more, I think, direct, like, modern, like, hey, this is black trauma that, people are experiencing now and continue to experience and stuff. And I think that's where, the creators of this film were really going with, like, the horror as opposed to, like, Candyman killing people and being afraid that Candyman's going to kill you.
I don't dislike that. I just felt like there was a way they could have done the same thing while still making the main characters, making me care about them a little bit more as characters. Part of the story and what happens hinges on one of the main characters making a decision to go look for one of the other main characters at a specific point in the film, and you're like, I don't know that I believe that they're at this, caring relationship part of what's going on where she would make that leap, basically. That was a little off-putting. I'm like, I'm not necessarily believing that right now. So if they had made the story more personal and more, I want to say a little bit more believable, they could have still gotten across their point and made maybe me care about the characters a little bit more than I did.
I think this movie has some things that could be a little bit better and stuff on those aspects, but overall, I enjoyed, the Candyman film. It wasn't one of those that I was like really scared throughout. No, but there are some moments with our main characters that, I do feel for them and do feel some kind of fear or dread and stuff for them. And, we're kind of talking a little bit about the end. Don't want to give anything away about the end, but to me, it kind of caught me by surprise a little bit with how the movie ended. But when I thought about it, like, man, I shouldn't have been surprised at all because the whole movie builds up and foreshadows this ending.
I felt like one of the disconnects for me, and this could be totally my privilege speaking, okay, was things could have been put in a little better order, I thought, without changing the film at all. So one of our main characters, he gets this bee sting, and his hand is like going all necromancer, like, it is not a normal bee sting, obviously, or you're having an exaggerated response to it. And I'm like, dude, you need to go to a hospital. You need to go see a doctor about that. That's not something that you can treat. And he's got his hand out and people can see it, and his his significant other can see it, and it's just like, no, that's pretty bad. he does end up going to a hospital like way late in the film, and that's where he finds out like the truth about his, his birth, and he goes to talk to his mom, and I'm like, if all of that happened further forward in the film, that could have been the impetus for like him needing to know more about Candyman, him needing to go find this stuff out. I felt like just moving that from where it was forward in the film would have benefited. Is that crazy thought?
Me, the way I kind of saw it was kind of like an artistic thing. It's that small bite that, slowly transitions throughout the whole thing. And I think that is supposed to be the more symbolic. I don't think it was meant to be like a sudden change. It's meant to be that slow build up throughout the film to get up to the end. So I think as kind of like a structure or whatever, I mean, maybe, story for one thing, but I think for the structure of the film is the reason why it's that slow build.
Man, I just feel like it was a little unrealistic in a horror film about obviously an urban legend that comes to life and slashes people. That's all I'm saying. Like, man, your hand looks like it's about to fall off. Maybe go see somebody about that. And again, why I say is it could be just my privilege. Like, maybe 100% that's just, they mention he's a poor, struggling artist. Like, he really doesn't have a job. He's not making much money. Going to a hospital is just not a thing for him. But you could just, square that away in a couple of lines where, his significant other is like, hey, you should probably go see the hospital for that. And he goes, no, it's okay. We don't have the money for that right now. Fine, good, awesome, explained away. But they don't do that.
Depending on where they're living and stuff in there, I don't think, money is really the problem or whatever for them if he wanted to go to the hospital. But, yeah, I mean,
Matt, this is America. Bee sting at the hospital costs $10,000. Honestly, though, all in all, it all comes down to this. Matt, is Candyman 2021 a worthy successor, sequel to the original Candyman?
I think it is. I think it still stays true to the original. It adds some new things, and I think it sets up for future of Candyman. I think it is a worthy successor and stuff too. And we kind of talk about too, like, if Candyman has to continue on with, Tony Todd being, the main, Candyman villain, I think this movie sets that up fine where it can do that. And that the continuation of Candyman can keep going on. So, yes, I think this is a worthy successor to Candyman, and I think it's a good horror film to watch.
Yeah, I think it is the best sequel to Candyman. It is the first one that really moves the story in a logical progression forward from the original movie without just saying, oh, we're going to be a slasher and try and compete with Jason. Like, no, you can't compete with Jason or Michael Myers, that's not your job. You need to be telling intellectual stories about Candyman, and this movie does that. Even though I think that there are spots where it could have been better or missed opportunities, it still works mostly as a film for me, and like I said at the beginning, very much so as a Candyman film.
Well, Randall and I want to know what you guys think about Candyman. Let us know in the comments below. Also, be sure to check out some of our other reviews. We have new movie reviews, flashback movie reviews, TV shows, and we also have deeper dive discussions.
We also have ourselves over on Facebook. Make sure to go check us out over there if you haven't. We post the day before on Facebook what's going to be coming up next on YouTube. We also post some tidbits from other fandoms. Probably see a lot of Star Wars and Star Trek stuff over there. What do you want from us? Put us on your calendars. New videos every Monday and Thursday. For now, I'm Randall here in Texas. See everyone next time.
And I'm Matt here in Michigan. Have a good day, everyone. Next time on No Market Media. Please consider checking out some of our other videos.